Welcome to the 12 Hike Podcast, where we talk about all the ways you can get outdoors. This is Zach Jenkins. Thanks for listening. Today's guest is Ralph Reevy Jr., although some of you may know him by his Instagram tag, Chief Crappie Raider. Also joining us is my favorite fat guy in a little boat co-host, Mr. Sean Penix. I was scrolling through Facebook and I saw this guy using a baitcaster to catch bluegill and crappie, and I had to talk to him because that's completely out of my comfort zone. I don't like baitcasters anyway, so I had to see what his secret was. Ralph's a great guy. He knows more about pan fishing than I probably will be able to learn in a lifetime, and he was very nice to talk to someone who was passionate about a very underappreciated fish. Okay, Senior Crappie Raider, I'm going to kick you out of here, and if you could, try to log back in, see if that helps.
You pronounce chief wrong.
Shut up. Idiot.
I mean, I'm not the one who doesn't know how to pronounce chief.
Hey,
here he is.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. Before we get started, what's your name?
Okay, my name is Ralph Reevy.
Ralph, okay. Where are you from, Ralph?
I'm from New Jersey.
Hey, you were right, Sean. How'd you figure that out?
He posted on Instagram. He posted about a park that he was at.
Okay.
I don't remember which one it was.
Great observation. Yeah, I do post some of the places I fish at. Of course, I can't give up my honey holes, but
before we get too far into the episode, thanks for coming on. You are going to be our, I don't know, third or fourth guest on what we like to call Fat Guy in a Little Boat. Me and Sean are pretty husky, and we have kayaks. We love kayak fishing.
Okay.
So it all just kind of fit.
All right. Thank you guys for having me. Glad to be here.
And one more order of housekeeping. I feel obligated to go ahead and ask you, what's your opinion on freshwater drum?
Well, I mean, personally, I never had that experience with any freshwater drum. I have fished for them in the ocean off on a charter boat a few times. I would like it though. I think I would like it. I heard a lot of good things about it.
They're garbage fish. Don't worry about it. You can listen to a couple of the other podcasts. It's a good little story.
Okay.
A little bit of background. Did you grow up in New Jersey?
Yes. Born and raised in New Jersey.
And as far as like your outdoor stuff, did you have family that got you involved in fishing early?
Yes. My dad actually was the first person to really get me into the sport. He would take me and my three other siblings out with him. He would go fishing, pretty much every week or, every other week. He went out a lot, except for, when I got started, I would say probably like maybe 5 or 7, somewhere around there. I was very young. But it was more for table fare. It wasn't much of a sport back then. Just, to put a meal on the table. Okay.
Taking out that many siblings, did your dad have a system worked out to keep you guys all fishing and happy?
Well, I'm the oldest, so, I had, my experience 101 for a while. After that, my younger brother, he had tied to a rope, so just in case he wouldn't run off into the water. So I tied him to a tree so he can go, but so far, he can stay within eyes reach.
I figured out my problem, Sean. I just need to tie Henry to a tree and I can do whatever I want. I've got 2 kids. Sean has 2 kids.
Okay.
My kids are savages, so taking them fishing is a real chore.
Yeah. Well, I think what would help is, just to keep them interested. For many of us, especially as a new angler, um, if there's not much excitement, or that has your attention, it could be very easy for a child to drift off onto something else.
Sure. And is that, whenever you guys were kids, is that what kind of got your love for pan fishing fired up? Is that what you guys fish for all the time?
Well, yeah, we did a fishing for a little bit. Everything I did, freshwater fishing for different species. Did a lot of saltwater fishing, but my earliest remembrance of fishing was definitely with the panfish. I had so much fun. I instantly, I didn't want to leave, to be honest. As a little youngster, just seeing the fish and handle them, I would say that's definitely what got me into the sport, right? Well, and kept me into pan fishing. It's just how, consistent the bite was.
Yeah, and it's I can I don't know if I can speak for Sean or not, but I love catching panfish. They are the best.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I,
absolutely.
a lot of the guys around here, in Southern Ohio, where I'm at, where Zach's from, um, they go all out to catch the big bass and the things like that. But man, a good panfish day where we wrangled some big panfish, or just 100 bluegill or something ridiculous. Like, those days always stand out more than the day that I caught two big bass. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that has a lot to do with the skill level and the mentality of the angler. Of course, if you're out there for a reason, say if you're tournament bass fishing, then that one or two fish that you might catch the whole day might be worth it. Uh, but if you're just going out there to have fun and enjoy the bite, the panfish action is definitely it definitely it is exciting, and just makes you really appreciate being out on the water.
You mentioned skill. I was looking at all your Instagram posts of your panfish. To catch those big, what I would call like a flat face bluegill, just those things that are huge. They're not that easy to catch.
Oh no, they're not. I think that's kind of what most anglers have in mind. When they hear of pan fishing, they think that you could just go out with a bobber and a hook, maybe a worm or a cricket, and you will always find them. When that's really not. It's not the whole truth. I mean, there are days that is better than some where you can find them easily and catch abundance of them. But to really find those trophy panfish, no matter what species that is, it takes a lot of work. One being locating them. You know, you can't catch them if you can't find them. So the bigger panfish, like the bigger crappie, they don't they usually don't hang up in schools as most crappie do, or even the bluegills. They kind of set off, a bit by themselves. So it's kind of like you if you might be bass fishing for a big bass, it might be one or two bass in an area. It's kind of the same deal for those bigger panfish.
So when you're looking for those panfish, say you go to one of your honey holes, what are the key things you look for when you're trying to find those big panfish?
Structure, structure. I look for one of the first things I look for is definitely structure. Panfish, no matter what species, most of them all kind of favor the structure to avoid being eaten from bigger prey. And also, it's a great ambush place for them to hide and grab their school of bait fish that might be coming by or under a rock or a tree. So structure would definitely be one of the first things that I look for when chasing after big panfish. The second would be trying to find a bait source.
Uh, what kind of bait source? Are you talking just like small minnows, shiners?
Yeah, and this is a one thing that when we talked where you mentioned the skill level. Okay, when I'm out on the water, what I tend to do, I have my go-to baits that I like to start out with, uh, but not all the time does that work. So it might take a little bit of on the water adjustment. And if I see what kind of bait is in that particular body of water that I'm fishing that day, if it's shiners or uh, fathead minnows, it could be crawfish or even insects that might be falling from nearby trees. I kind of, I always pay attention on the water as to what's happening and what bait is in the area, and that's when I make my adjustments from there.
Sean, I need to step my game up because I don't make adjustments, man.
That's what I was going to say. I think that's probably the biggest mistake as somebody that is fishing for panfish. Probably one of the biggest mistakes that I make. If I go out with whatever waxworms, mealworms, crickets, redworms, that's what I fish with, and instead of paying attention to what's going on around me, I'll just move to find more fish that will bite.
I mean, sometimes that's the another key feature right there. You can be on a school of fish, on a school of crappie or bluegill. Well, I'm gonna say crappie because I I haven't been on a school of bluegill that I just couldn't get the bite. But crappie, it might be a different story.
Yeah, if you can't get bluegill to bite, it, it's time to call it a day. I think.
Well, it's a lot that goes into it. As far as the time of the year, what season you in, uh, or if it's a pressured body of water that you fish, that plays a huge that makes a big difference on the water as well. If they're used to seeing lures and or seeing hooks, biting hooks, they can kind of steer away from any bait or lure that doesn't look realistic or it's not moving, like it's a natural bait.
Yeah, my problem is I've got my confidence lure that almost always works, and Sean has made
Uh,
fun of me for it several times. I'll fish it no matter what. It's just that's what I'm comfortable with, and it doesn't matter if it imitates what's in the water or not. Like I could be fishing a place that has a large crawdad population. Nope, I'm throwing on my Roadrunner. Screw jerk baits and all that stuff. Which, after looking through your Instagram feed, has kind of opened my eyes a little bit because I want to talk about your tackle a little bit. You're throwing
okay.
lightweight crankbaits with a bait caster. That blew
Yeah.
my mind.
Yeah, it's the name of the particular bait caster that I use it's made by a newer company by the name of Pissy Fun. The name of the reel is called the Spark, and then it's Spark Pro. And what it actually is, it's let me say, it's like a ultralight version bait caster that and able it allows you to cast lighter lures than your standard bait caster would. In other countries like China or I think even Russia, they call it a bait finesse style bait caster or BFS setup is also known by, and it's actually been growing a lot of popularity over here in the states. Other brands out there has them like Shimano, Daiwa. I think even uh, Abu Garcia might even have a few that's coming out. So it's been growing a lot of popularity, and although it's not necessarily like it's something that you have to have, it's just another for me. It's a fun way to fish for the panfish.
Yeah, especially using that crankbait because you're not going to get the what I would call a bait stealer. Jumping on that crankbait all the time. You're targeting those bigger
Yeah,
fish.
absolutely. I was just going to, add on to that. I've taken notice of that myself. Every time I go out or every outing, it's never a loss, whether if you catch fish or not. It's all what you take from it, and I've noticed over the time that when I do put on or when I make the change to bigger uh, baits, I do generally get those bigger fish to bite. But I will add that that's not all the time. I've caught some really big panfish on the smallest soft plastic lure that you could probably find. So it's definitely it plays a part into it.
Why do you think that is? What do you think makes a gigantic panfish chomp on a little tiny lure?
It's kind of like a snack for a panfish or any fish. If some again going back to the mood of the fish, if due to if that's the season, whatever season it is, or if it's a real hot day, just like us, we might be kind of sluggish, not really wanting to move a lot, or trying to stay in the shade. They don't really want to chase after a bait that will more than likely give them the run for their money or make them really chase it. So if you look at a 2 inch tiny swim bait or maybe a inch and a half crawl or something, I feel like they believe that it's an easy meal for them. So I would think that's why they chase after it more.
Sean, you got anything to add? I've been talking a whole lot.
I always like to when we talk to other anglers and even some of the other like the lure companies that we've talked to, those guys are anglers as well. One of the things I always like to do is just listen, because a lot of what goes into the success you have in fishing is your thought process, right? And it's always neat to hear somebody's thought process in action, because as you're talking to us about what may work or why it might work, and so forth, like, you are putting your thought process into words. One of the questions that I always like to ask when we have another angler on is, like Zach mentioned earlier, he's all about the Roadrunner. If you are going to, either a honey hole or a new spot that you're looking at, one of my favorite questions to ask people is, what is your confidence bait? What's your go-to? A bait that, regardless of the conditions, regardless of what you're fishing for or how you're fishing, that you're going to be able to hit, a big group of crappie, some bluegill, whatever the case may be. What's your confidence bait when you hit the water?
One of my favorite go-to baits that I pretty much always like to start out with would definitely be Euro Tackle's B Vibe. It's a 2 inch swim bait. Kind of a narrow profile, so it's you know no matter what size panfish or any fish, um, they wouldn't have a problem fitting it into their mouth if they were 3 inches big or if it was 17 inches big. Uh, the action on that little 2 inch swim bait is unbeatable. I used a lot of different styles swim baits for bigger crappie, and I'm not gonna badmouth any company saying that it doesn't work. I just found that the action on Euro Tackle's B Vibe is superb. It surpasses a lot of other lures that I've used, and I kind of use that lure as a search bait, just to get an idea of where the fish might be at. That's probably one of the first lures that I'm throwing.
I can get behind it.
I want to go ahead and say something. Me and you are amateurs when it comes to pan fishing compared to him, because I don't have any of these thought processes when it comes to bluegill. It's so strange because the way I grew up fishing anyway. You just it's a bobber worm. You throw it out there. There's bluegill there. They're there. You don't
But
have to
see,
search for them.
I think where you do have these thought processes, though, Zach, is when we're talking about crappie,
Oh, yeah, for
because
sure.
if I go out or you go out, if we go out and we're looking for bluegill, I don't have a problem finding bluegill. Like, the only time that I have issues finding bluegill is when I start fishing bigger moving bodies of water. You know, we've talked about the Little Scioto in the past. Um, the Little Scioto is a bad example. It doesn't move fast enough.
Yeah, the big
Ohio
soda.
Brush Creek and the Big Scioto River. Like, if I were to go out and look for, you know, a slab of either species, either sunfish of whatever color you want to call them, or a crappie, like, I would be lost. But if I'm on a still body of water and I'm looking for bluegill, like, give me a minute. That's all it's going to take. Then now they might not be bluegill of any size, but I'm going to find bluegill. Where I have the breakdown that I think you and Chief have or don't have is with crappie. Like, I know with crappie, structure is the big thing, but I don't run any graphs. I don't run any kind of electronics. I even am super lazy about it because I don't even find topo maps. I just look at a spot and say, yeah, this looks good. Let's fish here. I don't have any of those thoughts when it comes to finding crappie, other than I know that they're in structure. And typically, if you find one crappie, there's at least two or three there. I caught one. How do I replicate it? If I don't catch one, I don't look for crappie. You know what I mean? Just because I
Okay.
struggle
Yeah.
to make that connection.
Okay.
Well, I mean, my early experience with crappie was with a friend of mine. His name's Terry. If it wasn't for him kind of holding my hand and showing me some of what he uses that's successful, I'd be in the same boat. I mean, and I feel like having electronics on board helps quite a bit. I'm not sure if you feel that way.
Oh yeah, it does. It does. It definitely it helps. One of the reasons why I did pick up one myself was to see the underwater structure. You can visibly see the structure above the surface, like maybe a overhang tree or a bridge pilings, but the underwater structure and depth is the reason why I grab one. It definitely helps.
Yeah, I mean, looking at your kayak though, I mean, I'm envious. You've got that thing looking very nice, might I say.
Thank you.
What made you
Thanks.
go to a Vibe kayak?
Uh, well, honestly, Vibe. The reason why I chose a Vibe kayak is, Vibe kayaks. They're all about getting anglers on the water. So they make great quality kayaks that's not overpriced. So that is pretty much affordable for the everyday angler or even advanced angler. If you want to get a kayak, they have one for you. They have, different size kayaks. Uh, and another reason why I like their kayaks, you know, they come with pretty much everything you would need. You don't have to buy a kayak and then go spend another 100 or $150 for a paddle or to buy a seat with it. It's kind of like a package deal with them.
The kayak world is crazy. You know, me and Sean have talked about it a
Yeah,
lot. Spending the money to get a high quality kayak or messing around and buying a cheaper one. I'm in the same boat you are. You're better off just to spend a little bit extra money and get that really high quality product.
absolutely. When I first started out in kayak fishing, I had grabbed a lifetime Tamarack from Walmart. I was paid about $300, maybe a little over, and it wasn't a bad kayak. It worked. It got the job done. But as I really began to get into the sport of kayak fishing, I was like, wow, this is good, but I'm noticing some things that I wish were a bit different. Like the first kayak I had was only a 10-foot kayak. So, it was pretty small. I wouldn't say, the stability wasn't there, um, but it was pretty small. Didn't have a lot of accessory mounts or come with a lot of fancy bells and whistles. I mean, but if you're just getting into it just to see if you like the sport, I don't see anything wrong with uh, grabbing a cheaper kayak. But what I've learned from my experience is if you love fishing, if you're really into fishing, you'll be better off just spending a little bit more to get a kayak that you're really going to enjoy and love the fish out of. Because after that, you'll keep trying to upgrade your kayak or a paddle or whatever it is, because there's always going to be something that you're not going to notice when you first buy the kayak. Unless you test it out, unless you test it out on the water for a little bit, it's always going to happen.
You know, Sean, you probably should have tried that with your kayak to figure out if it was going to try to kill you or not before you actually bought it.
Yeah.
Sean had a Franken boat. It was awesome.
Yeah, my first kayak was a Ascend FS12T. Their sit on top kayak. It was a 12-foot kayak that, if everything had worked, would have been a phenomenal starter boat. Other than the fact that it weighed 2 tons,
Oh wow! Yeah.
but that mold of kayak, that specific model that I had, the model years that they ran that were like that, had a really bad problem um, of the plastic in the scupper holes being very thin, and so
Okay.
when you would put any kind of load on top of the kayak, they would form micro cracks, and then once it did that, there was really nothing that you could do to keep it from taking on water. I tried everything to to fix it. I used epoxies, I used caulking, I used spray foam, duct tape. I mean,
It was bad.
I added about 12 pounds of angle iron to an 80-pound boat just to get my seat up off of the deck to try and help it not crush as much. It was
Wow.
it was a good time.
Yeah, it's just
So
one of those things you overlook.
was it?
What is it?
I had a question for you. You said it was the scupper plugs itself, or was it that the recess hole where the scupper
It
plug
was the
go?
holes. Um, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It was not a good time. The worst it got me. I wasn't out with Zach when it happened. I was paddling in a small, like, it was like a large pond. I wouldn't even call it a small lake. Um, and I paddled across to the other side, and I looked down, and there was water in the bottom of my boat, and it wasn't going back out the scupper holes. And I was like, "Oh, that's not great. I need to paddle back to the back to shore and get out of my kayak before it sinks." So I'm paddling, and I got to about 12 to 15 feet away from the shore, and I had to bail out of my boat to keep it from sinking and losing all my fishing gear and my kayak. So there I was in neck deep water and mid shin deep pond mud, trying to tread water and get myself and my kayak and all my gear back to the shore. It wasn't a great time. I don't recommend it.
It's
Right.
funny because
Yeah.
do you listen to Meat Eater the podcast Meat Eater?
No, but I've heard of it.
Steve Ranella and some of his hunting buddies, they talk about the two different types of fun. There's like the really cheap fun. It's like a roller coaster. It's really fun at the moment, but then after it's done, you kind of forget about it. And then there's that second type of fun where in the moment you're like, this is stupid. I'm never doing this again. But then you can look back and laugh. That's kind of your Ascend kayak.
Oh yeah, that was definitely my experience. Like in the moment at the time, I was terrified to go on trips, like any kind of trip. Um, Anytime we went down any of the creeks or rivers that we have around here, I was petrified because those don't always have good accessible banks, and they can get you know deep. So I was always worried that I was going to sink my kayak in the middle of any of the creeks or rivers around here. So I just stopped going a lot until we upgraded. But now I have I've got one of the Bonafide RS 117s, and I
Okay.
love it. So it worked out in the end. I kind of went the way that you mentioned earlier. Like I got a cheaper kayak and thought about all the things that I would upgrade and ran into those almost immediately. And then I bought a better kayak.
Yeah.
The first thing that I would upgrade for my Ascend was the non-sinkability. Like if it just hadn't tried to sink, it would have been a much better kayak. So once we fixed that problem, I was okay.
Oh, that stupid boat.
Mm.
But speaking on the kayaks, I'm not sure how far you want to go into the kayak topic, but one another thing that made me buy a Vibe kayak was the weight of the kayaks. Uh, for most kayak brands, you think of, okay, a really good kayak, like as you mentioned about the Ascend, it has that real thick mold, that solid plastic that doesn't bend at
Mm.
all. They can, most of them can be really heavy, and if you're by yourself and you know, hauling all of your gear on there or trying to get to your launch spot, that can it could be draining. And the Vibe kayaks, they're pretty much all of them are under 100 pounds, all of them, and that blew my mind away. When you actually on the water with it, and you would think it might be a little bit more tippy, and it's not.
Yep, that's one of the things I appreciate about my wilderness systems. I've got a Tarpon 120, and I think
Okay.
my kayak, outfitted with everything, weighs, I don't know what, Sean, 70 pounds maybe?
Probably less than my kayak empty. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, like you were saying, super stable, but it still has all the stuff I need. So I'm a wilderness systems guy. I don't think I'll ever buy another brand.
One of the big differences between the Bonafide that I have and the wilderness systems that you have, though, is your kayak is much more narrow.
For sure.
Like when you get in the kayak, like you're in the kayak, even though it's a sit on top, like you're in the kayak. You know what I mean? Like there's not much room to the left or the right. That's all you got. The one thing that I do like about the Bonafides, especially because I am a bigger guy, is that I've got storage immediately to the left and right of me. There's a tackle tray storage spot on the left, and a nice huge molded in cup holder on the right, and there's storage under the seat. It's just there's space everywhere. So that's one of the things that I really appreciate.
Yada
Um,
yada yada.
yeah.
My wilderness system is Formula One, and your Bonafide is NASCAR. Let's just go ahead and say it, bud.
No, don't listen. Don't. Why you gotta bring NASCAR into this? That's just disrespectful to my kayak.
It's kind of funny. The first boat I ever bought, it was a motorboat. It would only turn left, so I guess it was kind of like a NASCAR boat.
You bought a boat that only turned
At
left.
the time, I didn't know it.
Okay.
I think this guy seen me coming a mile away and hustled me. So I bought this boat, and I was like, man, I'm going to get to go out in the lake and have fun, blah, 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 blah. So me and my wife and a couple friends, we launched the boat, and I pretty quickly realized that something's not quite right because I can't turn right. So there I am out in the middle of this lake doing left-hand circles. It was
Wow.
bad. And listen, trying to get it on the trailer was horrendous because if I overshot the dock, guess what I had to do? I had to go do the whole freaking circle over again.
I'm just curious. So, what was some of the comments or facial expressions that other anglers on the water,
Well,
you know,
in our wonderful little part of Southern Ohio, I think at that point in the evening, pretty much everyone was drunk.
Hmm.
So, and
were-
beyond that, I really didn't look at anybody else. I was just trying to get the hell out of there.
Well, they probably saw you because I know you, and you were probably lit up bright red like Rudolph's nose, embarrassed.
Yeah,
But at the same time, they were probably thinking, "Yep, Bubba's had too many to drink. He's out there doing left-hand turns again."
he's probably telling some damn NASCAR story. I don't know. It's so weird because when you're out in the water, you can see some of the darndest things,
Hmm.
and you just kind of have to look at it and go, oh, that sucks for him. But needless to say, I think that soured me on ever buying a big boat again. I'm perfectly happy fishing on my kayak.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love it. You know, I was sold once I got the feel of, just being closer to the water and being, having that total access of wherever I wanted with or without a boat ramp is what really sold me on to kayak fishing. And I don't ever have any plans on buying a boat. I'm perfectly fine with the kayak.
That's a question that I get all the time, and people always ask like, "Oh, you kayak? Well, where do you go?" And I always get the dumbest looks back when I tell them, honestly, wherever I want. Like, I don't have to think about it as long as I can get to the water. I'm not diving off of a cliff or anything like that. Like, I can go kayak there. And I think that's something that a lot of people just don't grasp. It's always my favorite. Oh, where do you go kayaking? Wherever I want, as long as there's 6 inches of water. Yeah, yeah, but where do you go? Anywhere. Like, you have a deep puddle in your backyard, I'll come kayak it. Like, I'm not afraid. Anywhere there's enough water, I can go.
Absolutely, and that's the huge advantage. I believe that's another reason why the kayak industry is gaining so much popularity is because you can literally fish anywhere.
Do you feel like fishing out of a kayak gives you any advantages for catching those large panfish you like to catch?
Absolutely. I don't have any motors on my kayaks, which is a good thing because, as Sean was saying, sometimes you have to go in those really, really shallow areas, and sometimes that's just enough to find those trophy fish that you might be looking for. Those unpressured spots, or you have to go through some weeds. That's it.
See, that's funny because whenever I think about chasing a big, gigantic bluegill, for some reason my mind always goes to deeper, finesse, drop shot stuff.
That's a good technique right there. That's it, but again, you have to take into consideration of the seasons. Usually when the water gets colder, below 60 or 70, depending on where you're at, that's when I go deeper. That's when I go deeper. But I caught what, crappie over 2 pounds or bluegills maybe over a pound and really, really shallow water. And I think that's the advantage of having the kayak is because most anglers wouldn't think about it. A lot of people, even if you're shore fishing, you casting off the bank as far as you can to the middle of the lake or the river. But sometimes the bigger panfish could be right up under your feet.
See, I never think about that. I don't know why. Sean, I mean, do you have that thought?
Yes, for crappie specifically, yeah. I mean, I've always thought of or heard of crappie being deeper water fish. Um, anytime you watch any of the fishing channels or the YouTube guys or the crappie championship guys, like they always talk about finding structure in 12 to 16 feet of water and pulling monsters out of there. But I will say, once again, as far as bluegill go, we we saw it firsthand. We were pulling monster red ear sunfish and bluegill out of what,
Nothing,
2.5, 3 feet of water max.
if that.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. A lot of the things that I think about bluegill, I don't know why I don't ever try to transpose that over to thinking about crappie.
I would say, yeah, definitely like in the warmer months, in summer or even uh, late spring. A lot of those fish move into the shallows to go ahead and start breeding process or even to come in shallow for food. I mean, but the crappie, until the temperature gets right. They make that transition back and forth from shallow to deep water, but very possible to catch them in the shallows. And I honestly think that fishing in shallower water for panfish is an advantage, because you have less water to cover. If you're in deeper water, if you don't have a sonar of any type, you don't know exactly how deep those panfish, rather crappie or bluegill, might be. So if that's the case, I would switch over to a search bait, and fish it various depths until you get a bite. That's another way to fish for them, or just to know where they at in the water column. But fishing in the shallower water, you have less, uh, a lesser gap to cover. It's like it's right in front of their face. They can't miss it.
That's what I'm struggling with real bad right now. I moved to Colorado last year, and I'm surrounded by these big, clear reservoirs that are just open. There's no real structure
Okay.
around them, and I'm having a real hard time getting on fish.
Okay. You s- Now I have fished in a few different bodies of water that was super clear, and I can tell you, you have to definitely keep your distance, because if you can see them by just looking in the water, they can see you. They can see you, and that will make it difficult to get them to bite.
See, I think people kind of discount how wary a good bluegill can be. I mean, do you feel the same way that people just kind of overlook pan fishing as a legitimate, like, it's hard to do?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. For those bigger panfish that we were speaking about, I mean, let's be honest, they didn't get big for no reason.
Right.
you know, they've been around. They used to seeing lures, and if sometimes for the bigger panfish, if it's one thing that doesn't look right, you're not going to get them to bite. Rather if it's the way your bait presentation is, uh, if the plastic is hanging off the hook a little bit or slightly to the left or right, it, a lot of people, I do believe that a lot of people overlook, the whole concept of pan fishing.
And it's a shame because they're so tasty too. I don't know if you keep any to eat, but
Oh yeah,
God, they're so good.
yes, yes, they are great table fare.
That brings up an interesting question that I like to ask. What is um, your philosophy or your personal rules about keeping panfish? Because for myself, like typically, if I go and I catch a bunch of monsters, right? Like I'll maybe try to keep one or two of the big ones, but then I'll also, if I'm planning to have a fish fry or bring some home to eat, I'll try to catch 8 to 10 of the mid-sized guys to keep and bring home. How do you approach that?
Yeah, I agree with that. Whenever I do take fish to keep, I wouldn't keep the bigger ones. I would release them so that they could produce, more good sized panfish, whatever, species that might be. I believe that also depends on, your body of water and your area. I know some guys in the southern states, you know, a 2 pound crappie is normal to them. They have caught some 3 pound or 4 pound crappie. So whatever your, if it's a, fish that's, if you have a body of water that produces a ton of big crappie like that, like, if you catch them quite often, then I don't see any harm in that. But I agree with you. I would definitely make sure that you release the bigger ones to go ahead and keep that good size panfish population going.
Man, I couldn't. It's funny to get so amped up over a big panfish, but like me and Sean a couple years ago, we went to our little secret honey hole, and the monsters he was talking about catching, I think about that every day.
Yeah. Well, honestly, that's what kind of gives me that drive to keep fishing for him as well. I always say to myself, I every time I get on the water, I want to enjoy it. I want to have fun, but I'm always aiming or trying to find the biggest panfish in that body of water in hopes of, rather if it's breaking your personal best or, you know, setting a new record for your state, whatever it might be, and when you're panfishing, so you never know when that's going to happen. You kind of have to sort out some of the smaller ones first. It happens, but that's one of the things, the essentials that keeps me, you know, just driven to continue to chase after those monster panfish.
Do you happen to know the record for New Jersey for bluegill?
For bluegill, I don't know right off of my head right now. I have seen it, but for the crappie, I believe it was 4 pounds, or a little over 4 pounds.
Sean, check this. The New Jersey record is a 3-pound bluegill.
That's a whole lot of bluegill.
That is a bruiser.
That might be the record. Well, that's the record for New Jersey, but I speak to guys in other states, and they catch 2, 3 pound bluegills regularly. you know,
I'm pretty sure if I caught a bluegill that weighed a pound, I would never shut up about it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The day we went up there to Hanging Rock, we caught. Does New Jersey have a thing where they, like, if you catch a fish that's a certain size, they'll send you some kind of certificate?
For us, it's called a Fish
yes,
Ohio. I've heard them called like
Master Angler, I've heard a couple of those.
yes, yes. I think it might something like that, or a skill for angler program, something like that. Yeah.
So for our trip up there, we caught, what, 4 Fish Ohio sunfish in one outing, and that makes me super stoked just talking about it.
yeah, I think, and don't forget you had the Fish Ohio spotted bass that you caught as well,
Oh yeah, that's right. Forgot
right
about
there
that.
from the launch. That where everybody fished and all the beer bottles were. You caught a Fish Ohio right there where everybody fishes around, and then we went and slammed the panfish.
No, it was just stupid.
It was a good day. And oddly enough, right, like the spot that we went, it's it's an area that was reclaimed by the state of Ohio, from a bunch of gravel pits. So the water is crystal clear, like crazy, extra super duper clear. And we didn't we didn't do anything special. Well, I don't remember what Zach did, but I fished with a 3/8 inch pencil float and a 1/64 ounce jig head, and I parked my boat so that when I cast, my cast was, or where I was fishing was at the absolute farthest away that I could cast. And when the bobber hit the water, I would raise my pole straight up, and that would pull it just enough off of the ledge that they were holding on. And I didn't, we didn't fish with anything special. You know what I mean? It was just red worms and bobbers, like fishing as kids.
I honestly think we
Yeah.
just hit that at the right time.
That could be true.
Nah, I believe that though. I believe it. For the panfish, that's one thing that I do love. You can have a variety of different ways to fish for them, or your select bait of choice. But with me fishing for them all the time, it's I can say that not every way that I pursue after them or my preferred choice is always going to be the same. Or if I'm trying a new body of water, different things may vary. It all depends on the mood of the fish. I have fished with live bait, although I generally use artificial lures most of the time. It's mainly because, I don't have to stop at a bait store or get them the day before. It's pretty much grab and go. and I can have them as long as you don't lose them. You'll have them all the time.
That's another thing that I think a lot of people overlook about kayak fishing is I have to be trying really hard to get snagged up in a way that I can't get my lure or bait back. And a lot of times, I used to be 100% a bank fisherman, like just fishing from the bank, and the amount of frustration where, you know, my line is just out of reach in that tree, and if I were, a foot taller, I could just grab it. In the kayak, I don't have that frustration. I can just go get it.
Uh, Absolutely.
And that kind of lends itself to finding those bigger fish too, right? Because you can hit the structure hard.
Yeah, I would say so. But just a greeting. Yeah, I got snagged many times, or if I was probably fishing from the shoreline, there's no doubt that I would have lost that lure or that bait I was using. But just being in a kayak, I don't pull really hard once I know I'm hung up. I don't want to bury that hook any deeper than what it is, and I just paddle right over there to it and jig it a few times the opposite way. There you have it.
Same thing with creek wading too. Me and Sean used to do a lot of that because we had some smaller creeks that we could just walk in without the kayaks. And
Uh-huh.
no fear, throw that son of a gun as close to that brush pile as you want. If you get hung up, oh well, doop doop doop, walk over and get it.
But that's a thing that I don't think we ever talk about enough when we talk about going creek wading. You know, people talk about fish being easily spooked. I can't imagine the amount of fish that we've caught out of creeks while creek wading. Like if while the act of us just walking through the creek is spooking them, how many more are there? You know what I'm saying? Because when we go wading, there's not always days that we catch fish of any size, but we're catching fish the whole time. Like those are just the fish that didn't get spooked. What about the fish that got spooked? What are they doing? You know what I mean?
They sent the babies in there to see if it was real.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at these two idiots walking through the water.
No, I'm not going to say it's. I actually went wading today. Actually, I've caught some red breast and green sunfish, but I, even while wading, I'm still casting away. So it's not like they're right by your feet and you're trying to catch them on a hook. So I think it's, although it's really shallow water and possibly very clear water, but almost all the time you're casting a good distance away from you, so they can't quite see you just yet.
I guess that's a fair point.
In a way, it's kind of like trout fishing because I know a lot of these trout purists, they spend more time out of the water than they do in.
Hmm.
Uh, they're looking and they're off of ledges and on the bank, and they're trying to sneak up on these fish so they don't see them. And that's kind of the same way with those bigger panfish. You're trying to be sneaky.
Absolutely.
One more thing I want to ask you about. What's the panfish influencers team?
Okay. The I've always been passionate about pan fishing. Um, Here in New Jersey, there are a few other anglers that go out for them or enjoy it as well, but it's not really uh, a state like, let's say, in your area, and whether if it's Iowa, uh, Texas, or any of those bigger popular panfish areas or crappie areas. So it's a little different and challenging here, being from New Jersey because everybody bass fishes. So I created that as well as another group called Slab Yakin Fishing Association, where it's just basically dedicated for those panfish enthusiasts, people that love it. I'm actually working on a apparel brand as well as an elite team. For those people that enjoy it and want to showcase it, pan fishing and a light that basically will convince, or not convince, but really change the mindset of how panfish fishing is viewed.
Well, that's great. Whenever you get the apparel set up, send me a message because I want on that team.
For sure. Now,
Okay.
now, now, I for sure feel like we need to step up our game.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Right?
uh,
Hey, but you guys got the podcast going, and I think that's great as well. I'm pretty sure you fish for different species, but everybody have a different skill that they can use, or give back to the fishing industry in general. And I think that's important. Anytime you're thinking of a team, is everybody brings something different to the table. They have a unique skill or something that they can contribute.
well, and that's one thing. Whenever we started the podcast, we just wanted to kind of voice our opinions on different ways that people could get outdoors, because it can be
Right.
intimidating. You see, the bass championships, and these guys are flinging these huge jigs and catching these monster bass. Not everybody can do that. And when I seen your page and your passion for catching panfish, that's the gateway to get people fishing. I feel like get them a simple setup, let them go catch some panfish, and then you've made an instant lifetime angler.
That's really what I'm going for, and what I'm hoping to leave the impressions on other anglers or potential anglers when they view my page or anywhere on social media. I want to let them know that you don't just have to be a bass fisherman or fishing lady angler. If that's your preference, then that's fine. But I just wanted to show, because I feel like other species of fish aren't really getting the attention that they rightfully deserve, or people look down on it like, okay, I'm pretty sure a lot of I had plenty of people ask me, hey, why you panfish? Why do you bass fish?
That's probably the first time anybody has ever asked them that question.
you know, everybody, like I said, everybody has something that they love to do, and it's nothing wrong with that. I'm not
Right.
bashing bass anglers. Whatever it is that you love doing, then go ahead and do it. But you do it to its fullest potential. That's what makes you unique. And I wanted to be one of the first people to step up and say, "Hey, look, you want to be serious about fishing? You can do it. You don't have to fish out of a $200,000 boat. You know, hey, you want to start a YouTube channel, or you want to, go ahead and record your catches, or just enjoy your time outdoors. You don't have to spend a whole bunch of money on gear or boats, or you don't have to, you know, and that's pretty much uh, that's the impression that I want to leave, uh, and give back to other anglers that's coming up.
Yep, and that intimidation factor is real because I mean the pressure is on to have the latest and greatest fishing gear, tackle, boats. It takes the simplicity, and it takes, I mean, some of the joy kind of out of it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That's definitely
absolutely.
it's definitely an odd thing when you think about it. Like, everybody knows fishing for bass. Like, that's a big thing. In southern Ohio, we have a very small group of people that focus very heavily on muskie because a couple of the waterways we have a muskie population.
Catfish.
And yeah, like, I am feet from the flathead catfish destination in the Midwest. And that's the Ohio River. Like, down towards Cincinnati, that is big time business down there. But you talk to people about pan fishing, and it definitely, no matter where you're at, it's always met with the same thing. Like,
Oh, you
why
catching
you
bait?
fishing for bait? Yeah.
Yeah, they say that, but you like my brother, boomerang fishery. He enjoys fishing for snakeheads, and I had my fair share at them, and it is fun. But for me, it was more personal. With pan fishing, as I said, that was one of the first fish that got me hooked onto the sport of fishing. So I didn't want to, just go ahead and follow the trend and, be a bass angler or a snakehead angler, whatever it is. Just stick to what you love fishing for. And, if you're good at it, then why not? It's challenging. Pan fishing. Yeah, I know people look at it like, oh, it's easy, it's a cakewalk, but it's not. It's not that easy all the time.
The brother that fishes for snakehead, is that the one that was tied to a tree?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your dad caused him to go down the dark side.
Yep. That's what did it. I actually have just a couple more questions, and then I will be questioned out. Even though talking to you so far has been a blast, and as far as I'm concerned, I would love to have you back anytime that you would want to come back and talk to us.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, and I definitely would like to come back and we can talk more onto pan fishing or kayaking.
Awesome.
I definitely appreciate it though.
So, question number one that I have, I feel like this is kind of an important one, and I feel like Zach may agree with me. This is one that's definitely going to be added in, maybe, to our questions that we ask every angler from now on. Obviously, you've got your kayak loaded up, you've got your gear, you're ready to go, you're hitting the water. What is your setup, your rod, your reel, your line, your lure? What's that look like?
Okay. Uh, but most of the time I carry at least about 4 or 5, maybe 6 rods with me. Every trip I go out, and I see people when I'm out on the water, like, "Oh, you catch any bass?" No, I'm pan fishing. Well, why you got so many rods? But just as the bass anglers, they have different rod selections, so that while you're on the water, you don't have to keep tying different lures onto each rod, or they're used for specific techniques. If it's drop shot and pulling the crankbait, or a jig. So with that, I have I use ACC Crappie Sticks rods, spinning rods. I have one 10-foot rod. It's a two-piece. I use that for when I'm vertical jiggling. I have a 7 foot 6 ACC Crappie Sticks rod, a 6'6", and what little dock shooter. I believe it's like 5 foot, and an 8 footer. And all of the reels that I use on those spinning rods are made by Pissy Fun. I have the Carbon X 1000 size, Honor XT 1000 size, and the Viper 2 1000 size. And then I have the little Pissy Fun ICX5, which is an ice fishing reel, but I use that on my 10-foot jigging rod. And then I have two baitcaster setups. One is it's a custom Witch Doctor tackle. It's a 7 foot light casting rod. It's fast action with spiral wrap guides. The reel is the Pissy Fun Spark that I mentioned earlier. It's a 6:6 to 1 gear ratio. And the other one is the Shimano Sensolite, which is also a 7 foot light casting rod and a Pissy Fun Spark. So yeah, I don't know if I lost you or not, but
You lost me. You lost me at like 8 rods.
yeah, yeah. So I carry a lot of rods.
I was just going to ask, do you, with each of those setups, do you typically have a different, like, pound test, or are you specifically a 4-pound test guy, a 6-pound test guy? How does that work out?
Okay. Well, yeah, I do. My two bait casters. I have a 4 pound test fluorocarbon, and the reason for that is it the it helps me. I use a very light line on the bait casters because the lighter weight, and it allows me to cast those lures a little bit further on that bait caster. And all my spinning reels, I use Suffix Nano Braid 4 pound test. And it's a little bit expensive for fishing line, but if you enjoy pan fishing, that's the line to get. That's the line. It's a very light braid.
Nano braid, is that one of those new, like, what they would consider like a super line or something like that?
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like a spider wire or a gliss. It's very 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 light, very thin diameter, but it doesn't pop as easy if you were to use 4 pound mono or something.
Okay.
It definitely works.
I can dig it.
And each one of those rods, they are rigged differently. On my 7 foot, my 7 foot rod or 8 footer, I typically use that for casting jigs or vertical jigging jigs. I could do more with it. I have, but because I have so many rods now, that's what I like to use those for. And the shorter rod, I like the 6'6" ACC Crappie sticks rod. I like to pull my crankbaits or jerk baits on there. And the reason why I chose that particular rod for that technique is, when you're fishing on a kayak, you're closer to the water. And if you're not one of those guys that stand up while you're on the kayak, having a shorter rod would definitely help if you decide to pull a crankbait or a jerk bait, because again, bringing it back to the lure presentation. If I'm using a jerk bait, it might be you have to twitch it and pause, or just sometimes a constant steady retrieve. I kind of match them up accordingly.
I know we've said it a lot, but I thought that I took pan fishing seriously, but I clearly do not.
Oh, not even a little bit. We're pathetic.
Clearly, I am an amateur at best. So the other question that I feel that we're a little obligated to ask, because we've had both of these brands on the podcast. We've talked to both the founder of Trout Magnet, and he was a super gracious dude. He was great to talk to, and one of the head marketing guy for TTI Blakemore Lures, the Roadrunner that Zach was talking about, and he was a super awesome guy. And don't let that change your answer. What do you think about those lures? Pretend Zach can't hear you. You're not going to hurt his feelings if you don't like the Roadrunner. But those are lures that we bring up a lot. We talk about a lot. I want to hear it from a guy that focuses heavily on panfish. Those two lures, the Roadrunner and the Crappie Magnet, or the Panfish Magnet, or the Trout Magnet, any combination there. What do you think of those?
Well, I can't say anything bad about those. I have some of those in my tackle box as well.
There we go.
I do use them. I've used the Roadrunner, the different sizes, from what is like an inch or inch and a half, the 2 inches, the Crappie Magnet and Trout Magnet. I've used them as well, and again, that all plays a part into whatever area that I'm fishing and the presentation that I'm going for. Uh, I do believe that they are good baits as well, and they definitely have their place in the fishing industry.
See, Sean, they have their place in the fishing industry, unlike drum that don't have any place in the water.
You just hate freshwater drum because you can't catch them.
That's a good point. I have not caught one with you, so that may be part of my deep-seated hatred. I don't know. Sean tried to kill me when we were fishing one time, and it was all because of the stupid drum.
I didn't.
So what happened? I would like to hear.
All right, go ahead, Sean. Just tell the stupid story.
So, Zach introduced me. This is the first time that we took a trip to what is now one of my favorite wading locations. It's a nice trip to knock out 4 to 6 hours, depending on how the fishing is. We got down there. We were super rushed because it was like 5:30, and like I said, it can be a longer trip. So we started fishing, and we no sooner than we got in the water, a thunderstorm started brewing. Maybe the clouds were peeking over the horizon. We could hear the thunder. We could see the lightning, way off in the distance. So Zach starts getting kind of antsy, and as it gets closer, he's like, "Okay, one more cast, and then we got to call it quits. We got to get out of here so we don't get struck by lightning." I was using a Zebco 11, a little 5'6" micro rod and reel, and I was throwing a Rebel Wee Craw crankbait. Right, the storm is practically right on top of us at this
Gotta stop
point.
you. Hang on. You're missing a key piece of information here. You're
What?
making me sound like a big wuss.
Oh, well, I mean, he was fishing with a 9-foot fly rod because he wants to catch a carp on a fly. So he was waving around 9 feet of fishing pole while I had 5 feet, 5.5 feet of fishing pole. So if anybody was going to get struck by lightning, it was going to be him. But I was standing in the water with him, so we both would have been. It's a moot point that he always brings up.
That continue. Go ahead.
So I'm throwing a little Rebel Wee Craw, one of the little like 2-inch crawdad crankbaits, and there was a point that went out into the water. The spot that we were fishing had a solid rock bottom, and the water was maybe 2.5 to 3 feet deep, and we were up on a gravel bar that had a point that went out into the water, and I made my cast, right out along that point and was reeling it in, and something crushed it. Like I almost dropped the fishing pole because it almost got pulled out of my hand, and I fought the fish. It felt like 10 solid minutes because I had 4-pound test and this little teeny tiny fishing pole, and it felt like the fish was going to be strong enough to rip the guts out of the reel if I tried hard.
Wow.
So I got it reeled in, and it's still the biggest freshwater drum that I've caught to date. And Zach's like, "Okay, hurry up, gotta take a picture. We're gonna get struck by lightning, you stupid fish." And so he takes a picture, and I can't get the hooks out of its mouth. So Zach grabs his pliers and just grabs the middle of the body of the crankbait and just kind of yanks it out of its mouth, which straightened all the hooks because they're small brass treble hooks, so that just straightened the hooks to pull them out of the fish. He was like, "I'll buy you a new stupid crankbait, and I put that fish in the water. We got to get out of here before we die." And so ever since, he's hated freshwater drum. I think they're great.
Pound for pound, they are a great fighting fish.
I've seen videos of guys fishing and fighting freshwater drum. I haven't had that opportunity, but it's definitely something that I consider. I could see myself doing sometime very soon. But Zach, you're not alone, man. You kind of sound like me out there.
Well, it's one thing to catch. It was getting dark. Had there not been imminent death in the sky, I probably wouldn't have minded.
Yeah, that's me. I enjoy fishing, and I always put safety first. Always put safety first. You can't be back out in the water if something happens. So when I go out with my brother, that's what he said. "Come on, man, why you acting like that?" So,
just tie him to his kayak or something. Listen, man, I had a blast talking to you.
Same. I enjoyed it. I really did.
I have a little bit of a time constraint. I've got 2 kids up there that are probably about ready to be tied to something because of my wife. So unless you guys have anything else to add, I'd like to go ahead and wrap it up for this evening.
No, I'm good.
Fine.
All right.
Okay.
Like Sean said, you have an open invitation. Anytime something exciting happens, if something with the Panfish Influencers team kind of ramps up and you want to talk about it,
okay,
you're more than welcome to come back.
All right, thank you.
And what's some of the best ways for people to see your content? I know you're on Instagram.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I also have a Facebook page. It's also Chief Crappie Raider. And if you're on Facebook and you want to follow my main profile, it's Ralph Reevy Jr. And also, I'm just getting into the YouTube as well. Not a whole lot going on there, but I promise I'm going to be working overtime and try to get in some good quality videos up soon. I have about 2 videos or something, so just starting. But on Instagram is probably my main social media platform that I use quite often.
All right, fantastic. Listen, Ralph, I appreciate it, man.
All right, Thanks. Thank you guys for having me.
Anytime. Again, I'd like to thank Ralph for taking the time to speak with us. If you'd like to go follow him on Instagram, like I said earlier, his Instagram account is Chief Crappie Raider. Just be warned, you're going to feel really bad about catching bluegill because you're not on the same level as Ralph, I can guarantee you. We still have a fundraiser going for 12 Hike, trying to raise a little bit of money to get better equipment, merchandise, things like that. So if you want to head over to our Facebook page, it's the post that's pinned to the top of our page. Click donate $1 if that's what you got. If you got 1,000, I'm not going to complain about it, but we'll take it. Another great way, actually the best way to help us, is just share our page, share our podcast. That really helps us a lot. It gets us in front of people that may not know we exist. So go visit our Facebook page, 12 Hike, or you can go visit our Instagram page, 12 Hike Challenge. Thanks. Have a good day.